consistent demand signal with consistent resourcing would be really helpful. And so there's a balance between what we do as a Department of Defense to give them a consistent demand signal. It's the aspect of making sure we get a budget on time. You know, I've been a general officer for 15 years, and a third of that's been in continuing resolutions. That's not a way to have consistency. And when you don't have that consistency, it makes it difficult for our industry partners to ensure they've got their supply chain set up, their facilities set up, the workforce set up, and their lower level vendors are going to provide pieces and parts. And so consistency is going to actually increase trust and drive down cost for us. When we have uncertainty, it decreases trust and it drives up cost because, you know, I can imagine that a company's we'll do that, but we want to make sure we have a bit of an insurance policy for when there's a dip in the demand signal, or if there's a dip because of funding. I know there's quite a bit of focus here, and I think that the thing that we as a department will have to do is ensure that we have and provide the industry the right, where we need to prioritize, and then we need to follow it up with the resourcing, and then stay consistent throughout on what we're going to need from the defense industrial base.
Okay, so I have two questions here from reporters on, this is on Ukraine, and given the congressional vote last night and the president signing military assistance packages, is I understand we're starting to flow, you know, pretty quickly move here and flow weapons forward. So I guess there was an announcement on U.S. decision on moving forward with ATACMS. Can you talk through what you anticipate seeing here and how quickly you think aid is going to flow to Ukraine?
Well, as you might imagine, that what we do in the Department of Defense is plan, and we plan a lot. And we're always trying to stay postured to stay ahead of any type of decisions. And knowing, you know, the supplemental has been something we've been focused on. This national defense supplemental has been something we've been focused on for a while. And seeing that we were getting closer and closer, particularly last week when the House passed, we were well postured with the authorities and movement of munitions to Ukraine. So we've already leaned pretty far forward in a lot of areas, and you know, I understand the president signed it here just over lunchtime. So we're moving out, and we'll get capability to Ukraine as quickly as possible. The one thing I would highlight is you think about what Ukraine's been able to do when they've been resourced. You know, early in the conflict, they were able to take back 50% of the territory that they lost after Russia's initial invasion against a much more capable force. And you know, our support from the United States, but really from all the nations that are contributing, do make a difference to Ukraine, because it matters. Because what happens in one part of the world doesn't stay in one part of the world, and we've seen that via history. And I think what we're collectively doing in support of Ukraine is important.
Well, and also in Ukraine, there have been much heavier use of electronic warfare weapons. We've seen ports targeted. So there's also a question here from David Winks. As we and our adversaries move towards electromagnetic weapons, how are we protecting the infrastructure that our bases and ports rely on?
Well, this is a key area for not just our bases and ports, but just to be able to operate in a pretty dense electronic warfare environment. Because with that jamming, it creates fog, friction, confusion. We want to make sure we're able to do the same to our adversaries and protect ourselves from that capability as well. And so as we look at the capabilities we have today and the capabilities we are pursuing in the future, how do you, we want to make sure we're putting in the capability to defend ourselves and the flexibility. You know, many of the things we want to be able to do, for example, is like software-defined radios, where you can very quickly reprogram once the adversary is done something to jam your weapon system, the ability to reprogram fairly quickly, which is why it's so important to have strong engineering talent that's supporting what we're doing as well to be able to counter that threat.
So here's another great question here from Dana Linnett, who's a retired diplomat, foreign service officer. I have your change or die slogan from last year's electronic AFA on my personal email signature. But how do we change that slow acquisition system and calibrate it responsibly now? Will that change happen in our lifetime?
I sure hope so. And I think it's interesting. There's a lot of conversation about the fact that we need to change. We need to change our approach to acquisition. I've sat down with members of Congress. We all have the same conversation. But talk's not going to make it work. And, there was a study on our budgeting, a commission that did a study on our budgeting process. And I think there's room for improvement. The thing is, we got to step forward and realize that we have a crisis on the horizon. Matter of fact, we have a crisis right now. And I think the thing we got to be thinking about is we don't want to be in a position later on where we go, God, I wish we had changed, wish we had done something. We need to be pushing harder on those things right now. I think the one other area that I would highlight, and this is something that I was very fortunate as the Air Force Chief to work with Secretary Kendall. I have a deep operational background, zero acquisition. He's got some operational background, but he's got a lot of acquisition. Yes. And we both have engineering degrees. And I think the key aspect is how we pick an operator who knows what they want to be able to do, sitting with someone with technical expertise, sitting with an acquisition professional. Because there's, for the operator, they want everything they can get their hands on. The technical person can go, here's what's technically possible. And the acquisition person was going to be, here's how we can pay for it and how we can get it all together. And there's going to be some trade space in that dialogue. And those are the things that we got to be able to do. You just get the right people in the room to talk about the operational risk, the fiscal risk, and the technical risk to bring these capabilities forward much faster. And I think in some cases we don't necessarily have that. And because we don't, we're talking in our own circle, and we don't get so we can start moving forward. And at the same time, we got to be engaging with our members of Congress early in the process to get their support, and so they better appreciate the things that we need to do collectively and work together.
Yeah. I want to come full circle to a fundamental question, given all that we've discussed here. When you have all of these national defense strategy challenges happening near simultaneously, are our defense and military strategies adequate for the threat and the environment that we face?
Well, I think they are. You think about the 5 challenges in the strategy, I think we pretty much nailed it. You laid out, People's Republic of China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and violent extremists. And those are the key factors that are driving challenges to our national security. And now, with any strategy, it's only as good as the implementation. And that's where we need to continue. And we are making progress. The past several budgets that we have from the Department of Defense have been in line with the strategy. The key part is you want to make sure that the funding comes so you don't spend so much time on a continuing resolution. A good example, you mentioned munitions earlier. In the 24 National Defense Authorization Act, we have multi-year procurement for munitions. But you can't do that if you don't have the funding. And so we didn't be able to take full advantage of that authorization. But it's those kinds of things that we got to work together on to help us move forward, to ensure that the strategy that we've laid out, we're going to be able to execute. Even so, I am confident in our joint force. I'm confident in the work that we're able to do together. I'm confident what we'll be able to, but I don't want to wait till we get to a crisis that we go, okay, now we can, now we have to react because it will be a little bit time late. And so my goal is to try to spend as much time talking about where we need to go, but also looking at opportunities to drive action to the best of my ability with the tools that I have as a chairman, as I provide my advice, and those things that I, as I said, program recommendation, risk assessment, and other forms as well to move forward. Well,
and then would there be issues or assumptions that you might encourage we revisit in these strategies as we look ahead? Not asking you to comment on the election here, but whether it be this administration does an update to their current NDS or you have a new team that develops theirs, are there going to be certain things that you want them to take a hard look at and challenge?
I think it's just the implementation piece is probably the biggest piece. Because even if you think about the 2018 National Defense Strategy versus the 2022, it didn't change dramatically. Same 5 threats, maybe some minor adjustments. And I would say whatever strategy comes out and with whatever administration follows this one, I think the threats are going to be the same. Our approach won't change dramatically, but there could be room for improvement. I'm happy to work to ensure that the strategy we have today moves forward and whatever strategies come to follow. that's where my focus will be.
Well, I'm going to integrate another question here. Anthony Cannon, who's a National Defense Fellow, asks, how do you plan on staying focused on being apolitical in an upcoming election that has drawn the military leadership into politics recently? And if I can tag on to that, the congressionally established National Defense Strategy Commission back in 2018 in a consensus report had observed an unhealthy trend in terms of civilian-military relations. So, as you've come in now into the chairman position, can you talk to us also about the health of civ-mil relations in the department and how you and the Joint Staff are approaching that?
Sure. Let me first say that, my focus as a chairman is focused on warfighting. And in the memo I put out, honing our warfighting skills has primacy in all we do. That is my focus. And, for our military members, and when I go out and, in the building, but also when I go out and visit our service members, they're also focused on getting their job done. And I would say that, not that we've come into politics, but politics has pulled us into the conversation. I also think it's important that I lead by example, that we know and follow the rules. I'd encourage our service members and all of us to read through the letter that was written by previous secretaries of defense, the open letter written by previous secretaries of defense and chairmen of the Joint Chiefs that lay out 16 aspects of what a healthy civ-mil relationship looks like. And then for all of our service members to really stay true to the oath that we took. So that's the real focus area here. On the health of civ-mil relations, for me personally, I think it's pretty good. Now, there may be some friction points here and there. But as I said, when I wrote Accelerate, Change, or Lose, the key word there is in collaboration, and that's because that's how I operate. I'm a collaborator. I'm a team player. I'm a team builder. And part of that is how do you flatten communication? There will be times we disagree. I got that. But we need to be in the same room to have a conversation, because there are some things we agree on. And I really believe we need to focus on the things we agree on to move that forward, build a relationship, and as you build that relationship, the things that you thought were a big deal, that you disagreed on, you can typically figure out a way to work through. And that's the things that we have to do as military leaders, is to sit down with our civilian leadership and understand, how do we help them do their job so they can help us do our job. And, I feel it's pretty good, to be honest with you, and I've got great relations with many of the members within the building, our civilian leadership, and I want to set the example again, that's how important that is.
Okay, General, I've got two more questions for you here. As part of your Joint Force Development responsibilities, you have a policymaking role in Joint Professional Military Education, JPME. So given all the challenges we've discussed, what do you want to see out of our Joint Professional Military Education, and maybe what would you want newly commissioning officers, new enlisted service members to know from where you sit now as they embark on their careers?
Well, I think there's two things. I want them to really good at whatever their primary skill is. But at the same time, to realize how that primary skill fits into the bigger picture. And the more that we put that in in some of our PME at lower levels to show that there is a bigger picture. Naturally, there is some service rivalry, but in the big scheme of things, we're on the same team. And the better we understand how to operate together as a team, that makes us and continues to make us the most combat credible, most respected force in the world. There's always room for improvement, and I think because of, as we look at the threats, and it's interesting when I go out and see our young, some of the questions I get are pretty deep. And I go, when I was a captain, I don't think I could have ever asked a question that deep. But they're really thinking about these bigger issues, and we got to make sure that our professional military education is keeping pace, because they have access to so much more information. I got my first email address as a captain, and smartphones didn't come out until about 2007. And so this crowd of young service members are pretty in tune. And I think we've got to make sure that we're doing the things to make sure that that joint team is better prepared for the future.
Okay, so last question, which is better than my last question, so I'm going to ask it. This is from Madeline Chang. She's a visiting fellow here at CSIS and one of those next-gen thinkers, and she asks, what are the most surprising changes you have observed in the culture of the U.S. military since you joined 39 years ago? And then I'll just add as the last word, what gives you optimism here going forward?
Well, I think how sharp our young generation is. I just talked about how in tune they are with current events. The questions he's asked, their curiosity. I've done a little study on Gen Z. Matter of fact, I have a dinner tomorrow night at my house to talk about American education, tomorrow's workforce. And what I'm really finding is this younger generation wants to do something bigger than themselves. They want to be part of a team. They want to collaborate. Not that we didn't do it when I was much younger, but and when you step back and see it, you see the immense talent that they bring. And one of the things I do focus on and think about is when I talk about trust is the foundation of our profession, it's a trust that we do right by them, that we provide them the opportunity that they can all reach their full potential. And they're just immensely impressive in the things that they are able to do and the questions that they ask. And I enjoy it, partly because it challenges me. And I always learn something. One of my goals is to go home every evening smarter than when I came into the office. And because some of the tough questions I get, I've got to get a bit smarter. And I just appreciate the talent that we have, not only in uniform, but in our nation that's committed to serving and ensuring our national security.
Well, Chairman Brown, thank you so much for all the time you've given us. I can attest firsthand to the collaborative approach that you take. And thank you very much for the leadership that you exhibit, but also the leadership by example that you exhibit. So, sir, thank you very much.
Thank you.